I warned you. This is what happens when you cross the HOA president. That sentence would make sense later. At the time, none of it had happened yet. That afternoon, I was asleep on my couch when a violent tremor ripped through the house. The walls buzzed like something massive had collided with the foundation. It wasn't a normal noise. It felt wrong, invasive, like danger announcing itself before your brain catches up. I stumbled upright and rushed to the window, heart pounding, eyes still heavy. Outside, a massive yellow bulldozer rolled forward slowly, deliberately, its steel blade hovering inches from my parked car. Dust sprayed across the driveway as the engine growled. And sitting inside the cab, sunglasses on, posture rigid, lips curled in satisfaction, was Karen. The HOA president. She looked peaceful, almost spiritual, like she'd finally found purpose in destruction. Before I explain how things reached this level of insanity, let me rewind to where this nightmare actually started. It began on an ordinary afternoon when I pulled into my street and found Karen's sedan parked squarely in the center of my driveway. Not slightly over the edge, not halfway, fully planted, bold, intentional, territorial, no note, no apology, just her car, blocking my home like a flag planted in conquered ground. I walked over calmly, irritation simmering but controlled, and asked her what she was doing. She leaned against her porch railing like she was posing for an HOA newsletter, inhaled deeply, and told me my driveway had better airflow and hers felt stuffy. She said it casually, like it was a reasonable explanation. I told her I wasn't interested in jokes and asked her to move it. She laughed, slow, sharp, and condescending, then reminded me she was the HOA president. Apparently that title elevated her beyond normal rules. According to her, homeowners like me were background scenery. Our property was flexible, optional, borrowable. I swallowed my frustration and told her she had one full day to move the car. I didn't threaten, I didn't raise my voice, I just asked. Her eyes narrowed. She smiled in that way people do right before making terrible decisions. She said she'd love to see me try anything. I went home uneasy. Something about her tone stuck with me. Karen wasn't bluffing, she was testing. That night I barely slept, expecting fines, notices, or some petty retaliation. But nothing happened. By morning, her car was still there. That's when I realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a declaration. Chaos had officially been invited. Morning light spilled across the street, sharp and unforgiving. The first thing I did was look out the window. Her car hadn't moved an inch. It sat there smugly, like a dare made of metal. Strangely, I didn't feel angry anymore, just focused. I made coffee, let it sit untouched, and picked up my phone. I didn't argue, didn't knock, didn't warn anyone. Instead, I called my friend Marcus, a tow truck operator who despised entitlement almost as much as paperwork. I explained everything carefully, the blocking, her claim of HOA authority, her refusal to move. Marcus listened without interrupting. When I finished, he sighed once and said he'd be there shortly. True to his word, his truck arrived mid-morning. No sirens, no spectacle, just business. We took photos from every angle. License plate, location, timestamps, proof of trespass. I knew people like Karen thrived on loopholes, so I made sure there were none. The hookup was smooth. The car lifted cleanly, tires leaving my driveway at last. Marcus didn't impound it. He drove it directly back to Karen's house and parked it neatly in her own driveway, exactly where it belonged. No damage, no note, just correction. Before leaving, he gave me a look and said people like her don't stop when they're embarrassed. They escalate. He was right. Later that afternoon, I heard yelling before I saw her. Her voice cut through the neighborhood like a siren. She noticed a scrape underneath her bumper, damage likely caused by her own refusal to move the car earlier. She stormed over, pounding on my door, shouting accusations of theft, sabotage, harassment. I stayed calm and told her the truth. The vehicle was trespassing. The tow was legal. Any damage wasn't my responsibility. She wasn't interested in facts. She wanted obedience. She screamed about retaliation, fines, consequences, her face flushed with fury. When she finally stormed off, I stood there with a knot in my stomach, knowing this wasn't over, not even close. The afternoon settled into an eerie calm. Sunlight stretched lazily across the street. Birds chirped loud enough to lull me into a nap. My car sat outside perfectly fine, exactly where I'd parked it. I drifted off, and that's when the sound came. A deep mechanical rumble, low, heavy, wrong. At first, I told myself it was distant construction. Then shouting cut through the noise. Angry, loud, close. Then came the impact. Metal shrieked, glass popped, the ground jolted hard enough to throw me upright. Another crash followed, heavier, intentional. I ran to the window, heart slamming against my ribs. Karen was driving a bulldozer straight into my car. The steel blade crushed into the side panel like it was paper. She reversed, engine roaring, then rammed it again. Debris flew across the driveway, paint scraped, windows shattered. This wasn't an accident. This was deliberate. I ran outside yelling for her to stop, waving my arms, disbelief turning into raw fury. The car was already destroyed. Frame bent, doors warped, glass everywhere. Karen didn't flinch. She leaned forward in the cab, face red, teeth clenched, eyes locked on me with pure satisfaction. She shouted over the engine that this is what happens when people defy her, when they touch her property, when they forget who's in charge. Neighbors poured out of their homes. Phones came up. People shouted for her to stop. She ignored all of them. She rammed the car again, slower this time, almost savoring it. I stepped closer, screaming, begging her to stop, trying to break through whatever madness had taken hold. There was nothing left to reach. Finally, she paused. The bulldozer blade rested against the wreckage. Dust hung thick in the air. That's when I pulled out my phone. My hands were shaking, but I kept recording. I narrated calmly, forcing distance between myself and the chaos, the machine, the damage, her face, everything. She noticed and laughed, waving dismissively, convinced she was untouchable. Then faint at first sirens began to rise. Her expression flickered. Police cruisers arrived fast, lights slicing through the dust cloud. Officers stepped out carefully, hands near their belts, taking in the bulldozer, the destroyed car, and Karen still gripping the controls. They ordered her to shut the engine off. She argued, shouted about HOA authority, claimed emergency enforcement, invented violations on the spot. The words sounded hollow against the evidence surrounding her. I handed over my phone, so did multiple neighbors. Video after video showed her ramming the car, reversing, accelerating, doing it again. One officer asked if anyone was hurt. Another checked the rental agreement for the bulldozer, taken out that very morning in her own name. When the cuffs clicked closed, her fury collapsed into panic. She shouted threats as they led her away, the same threats that once silenced people. Now they echoed uselessly down the street. The legal fallout was swift and surgical. Prosecutors charged her with felony destruction of property, reckless endangerment, trespassing, and unlawful use of heavy machinery. The court declared my vehicle a total loss. Independent assessors calculated every detail: repairs, cleanup, towing, rental replacement, loss of use. The final restitution order totaled $132,000, payable through asset seizure and long-term payment plans. Her insurance refused coverage due to intentional damage. Sentencing followed. Karen received 20 months in county jail, with 14 to be served, and the rest suspended under strict probation. She was barred from HOA involvement permanently and issued a no-contact order. There was no dramatic speech when they took her away, no applause, just silence. While she was incarcerated, the HOA board removed her unanimously. Audits uncovered missing funds, falsified notices, and years of abuse disguised as enforcement. New leadership took over. Rules became written policies instead of threats. The neighborhood finally exhaled. When Karen eventually returned, she was thinner, quieter, and deeply in debt. The authority she once wielded was gone. No clipboard, no audience, no fear. My driveway stayed clear. The street stayed peaceful. And justice didn't roar, it settled. If you enjoy HOA showdown stories like this, make sure to like and subscribe. The end.